Everybody, Scout Crafty here again. We got a beautiful day, rainy day, great day to be in the shop, and you can see it's keeps everything nice and green, nice steady rain. A friend of ours, Bryan, I've known him for a long time, does some great work, and there's a big backstory behind this project. So we're gonna go downstairs, get started. It might be a little bit of a longer video, but I think you'll enjoy it, and it's a good project. So let's get to it. Here's the backstory on Bryan's Vise. It was his grandfather's Vise. He recently acquired it. Well, he had it for a while, and he'd been trying to work on it, but everything was giving him trouble with this Vise. And he says, maybe, he contacted me. He said, John, maybe you can help me out. So I said, yeah, I'm always willing, but sometimes I'm not able. But I said, let's check it out. What's the worst that can happen? I said, I'm not going to mess it up on you. So let's check it out. So anybody that knows me knows my favorite tool I own is my great-grandfather's Vise. And so I said, anything I can do to help you out? So here's the Vise he sent, and it's a beautiful Vise. There's nothing wrong with it and everything. It's a Starrett. Now, we don't see too many Starrett Vises, and I'm into Vises, and I'll tell you the truth, it's the first one I've ever seen in person. But apparently Starrett made a bunch of different Vises, and they always go for big money, so we can't really screw this up. And this was frozen onto here, and we took this off. I'll insert that footage now. And it was, probably rusty or whatever, no problem. And here's the swivel base it's got, all the parts. So what we're going to do, we're going to try. Now, Starrett was funny. They had their own threads and everything like that. But the first one we're going to do is try and get this off, because this little piece is what has to fit into here. You can see there's a little dovetail in the back of the Vise, and this fits in here. So we got to get this out of here, and the easiest way I know of, well, we're going to try heat first. I don't want to have to drill it out. So let's go over to Grandpa's Vise and see what we can do. Okay, here's the setup I thought would be really good. We'll take the threaded version, which is shot. I believe this is 1/2 inch. And we'll put it in here like this, and we'll get a good grip on here. All right, and then what we'll do is we'll heat it up, and then we'll take my monster crescent wrench, put it onto here, and see if we can't turn it off. Now, my idea was that I was going to pull this piece off, get another rod the same size, and Bob's your uncle. It was going to be an easy fix, so I thought. Okay, after a bunch of heat, a little bit of, you can see it's still hot. But what happened was we got a little bit of movement on there. You see this? I got a little movement, but it gets stuck. So you just work it back and forth. That's all. Just don't be in a rush. Back and forth. We got some movement. That's good, because each time it's going to go a little bit further. And what I would like to do, it has to come off this way. But see, the threaded end is mushroom. So what I'm going to try and do is bring it as much this way, cut a little bit of that off to make it fresh so that can slide right off. Okay, after about 15 minutes of going back and forth, we expose this much thread. Now I'm going to give a clean cut here and back this important nut off of that way. Okay, put a nice fresh cut up here, ground everything down so that there's no sharp edges, so this should be able to spin right off. What we're going to do now is we're going to put some oil on here to help it come off. Let that saturate in there, and that'll help take that off, hopefully come right off. Okay, it's off, and still a little bit warm, but threads in here are still fine. But, and you know something? The threads didn't look that rusted up on here. I'm surprised that thing just stuck on there, but it's off now, so now we could start working on it. Okay, just a brief side note here. All Starrett tools for some reason had their own pitch and size for threads. They didn't use standard threads. So if you ever get a Starrett tool and you figure you're missing a nut or a screw, you're not going to find anything from a hardware store or anything locally that'll fit it. They made their own screws. I think they did that for a reason. I don't know why. Same thing with this Vise. It's not a 5/8 inch pitch. It's a small. It's between 1/2 inch and 5/8, which is the standard Acme rods. So I had to pick one. I went with a smaller one for the simple reason. Another thing is the taps. If I would have went with a larger rod, let's say I went up to 5/8, that tap is $55 was the cheapest I could find it. So, sometimes you got to say which, is a little bit more reliable and still cost effective. So Let's take a look. I'm looking to pick up the Acme rod right now. I find the place Zorro. I love that company. They're great, and they have like 3 foot of it for 15 bucks. So I say, okay, I'm gonna. But they said for 6 feet, it's like $20. So, you know, for the extra $5, I'm like, I get double the length. So I go for it. So look at what they send me. This is what I'm saying. There's no way they're gonna send this thing to my house 6 foot long without getting bent up. But look what they sent me. Can you see this thing up here? This was sent to my house. Can you see this? Look at that. That big cardboard container was sent to my house, and I'm about to open it now. Check it out. Okay, we received it in beautiful shape, and look at that. Isn't that pretty? Now this is what we're going to work with. This is a beautiful, nice, brand new Acme rod, and I'll show you what else. Okay, now to complete the job, I also got a nice piece of 1018 steel, also from Zorro. And this is a nice piece of steel here, and what we're going to do with this piece of steel is we're going to make this part here. This is the part where the Acme thread that goes into the vise, and you can see here. So that's how we're going to make it. We're going to cut this piece here, and hopefully we'll be able to machine that down. And then I bought a nice Acme tap. So let's get started. Let's try and get this working. Now, if ever you're thinking of cutting through a bar this size with a hacksaw, you have to take your time, and the best way to do it is to score all the way around each side. So this way, when you do cut around each side, it will guide the blade and make it a straight, easy cut. But it does take time, and you have to give yourself time, and eventually you'll get through it. Once you cut it off, then you just straighten up the one side a little bit with a file. Okay, we cut off our piece of 1x2, and you can see now this piece is going to become this piece, so we have to, I'm going to take it over to the mill and then square this block up. Now, the biggest drawback on a mini mill is when you're working with hard material like steel, you have to take very, very light cuts, and you can see it takes a while to get through. Okay, now we took the block down even further. You can see here it's just about the right height, about the right width. And you can see here where we're going with this here. And now what we got to do is every time I can cut something off with the saw, you know, the mill, which this is 1018, it's pretty hard. So it's it takes a long time, you know, between cutting and the milling to get it flat. So we're getting there. Now we just got to work it down to this shape. Now, one tip is that you try and do all your drilling or any kind of hole making while this block is still square. This way you could chuck it into the vise with no problem. And then we're going to even tap it. And once we tap it like we're doing here, we can keep it secured in the vise because it's square. After this, then we'll go back to the mill and try and get it to be more of the shape we want it to be. Okay, so here we go. We got, it looks a little primitive, but this is going to be this. And you know, there was a little bit of hand fitting involved years ago, especially with the, you know, the dovetail and whatnot, but it fits in the vise, and it should be good. And now we're going to have to attach the hand. Okay, I hope this is a little bit interesting to you because it's interesting to me. Now, here is the piece that came out of there, and you see there's a little bump on one side. You see that bump? Now, this is why I'm saying about a lot of these vices were custom fit. What they would do is you see there's that double dovetail in there. If you look in there, you see there's the first dovetail is a little wider, and then there's a second one, which this fits in. Now, what happens is, to hold it in there, this little pin gets screwed in here like this, and that will rest close to this bump. And they file this down from the factory according to, you know, the play of the vise, you know, because everyone's different how they cast it. So what I did was, I added a little button screw, a threaded button screw. So if ever this should get loosened up through the years of service, he can, Bryan could always put a washer in there and back this out even more. But the way this fits in here now, you could see it fits in there nicely. And then the screw comes up from underneath, and there's about a 1/16 of an inch play between the screw, the end of it. Now there's no play in that screw whatsoever. So it's a really nice design, and I hope this works out really good. Everybody's favorite, the dake, and we straightened out the handle. On the small vices, handles are always bent a little bit. It's just the nature of the beast. Okay, here's where we are now. We drilled out the inside of this, cleaned it up because it's going to be difficult once this is in there, but straightened out. The rod is nice and straight now. I remember what that was like on the dake. We fixed it, turned this down, And you can see now we're gonna, this is called a press fit. See, it won't go in here by itself. I'm gonna have to press that in with the dake. Once it's pressed in, I'm gonna put a hardened pin through here. And you can see this was a little damaged from before, but I'm gonna put the pin right through there. It'll go through this rod, and that'll make it one piece permanent. Okay, to hold the threaded yoke into the vise, the original Starrett design had the threaded rod was here, and it had this little C-clip. And that was the only thing that held that yoke in there. So when you backed off on the vise, it would put all the pressure on the C-clip. It's a, you know, that's why you can't put any backward pressure on a vise. What I did, I made a little bit stronger. I made a collar here that when I press this in, it will fall on here, and I can have 2 set screws, 1/4x28 on each side. I turned this on the lathe. I also put a Delrin bushing in here so that there's no slop. I'll show you what it looks like. Here is the assembly all put together. You can see how that works. It's a nice spacer in there, very strong, no slop at all. And there's the Acme rod in there all ready to go, and it's just beautiful. So let's put it all together. I want to give it a quick clean up, put it together, and test it out. Now we pulled out the big guns for this vise, pulled out the big 10-inch wire brush, and that really made quick work of getting down through the rust and to the original finish. Now, you know my favorite part. Remember what the vise looked like before we started. And we're calling this vise done. Boy, this came out nice, didn't it? First of all, it's a beautiful vise. You know, the symmetry over here between the two tops is really, you don't see that in too many vises. And I touched everything up. I went over everything with the wire brush, the heavy duty one. And then I coated the whole thing in shellac. So I don't know if Bryan, what he wants to do, painted it. This is the original finish that was on there. But it's just shellac, so it's protected. Polished the slide here, and also obviously all the metal parts straightened and then polished them out. It is a pretty vise. It is a you know, it's one of them vices, like I said, you don't usually see a Starrett vise, but it works fantastic, and let's go try it out. Okay, you can see now the swivel base works nice. All you have to do is just give one turn, 1/2 turn, and it's nice and smooth on the swivel base. And to tighten it again, just one turn is enough to tighten it, so there's no need to bend on that bar. Straightened it out. This bar straightened out nicely, nice and smooth, polished out, and you can see how smooth this operates. That's out and in. And this one has a pretty, for the size vise it is, it has quite a big opening here, which would be about to here. You know, you have about, you know, about a 4 or 5 inch opening. And again, smooth all the way through the operation. Real nice vise, nice looking vise. And I think Bryan's going to be really happy with this. Okay, let's try out, make sure everything works good. Now we have a force indicator set up, a force gauge in the vise here, you could see. And pardon the shaking. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some pressure on it. That pressure that you see there now, each one of these here, that's about the 30, that's required just to hold it in there so it don't slip out. Now I'm going to put some pressure on, see what we can do. Okay, there's a 1/4 turn of the handle, and we're up to 100 pounds. That's 150. We're at 200 pounds here. Okay, we're at 250, 300. Okay, 350, 400. You can see, you can see here, it's really performing well. 400 pounds, and you know, we didn't even max it out yet, but I'm sure I could get it well above 400. Yeah, we're at 500 pounds now. I don't want to push it too much because I don't want to put too much pressure on the gauge, but 500 pounds we have on there, and it works really good. So in closing, I hope you enjoyed the light cleanup and fix of this Starrett vise. Bryan, real tribute to your grandfather. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll have it out in the mail. Everybody, I hope you have a nice day. Take care now. Bye-bye.